Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, April Seifert. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who is inspired to action, and that's my number one goal, to inspire you, my listeners, to take action in your lives. Each week, I get to interview some of the most inspiring women, and I'm bringing those interviews to you. Let's do it. Hello, everyone. I am so excited that you joined me this week. I have yet another phenomenal woman for you to meet this week. I'm so pumped about this week's interview. But just a couple of things before we get started. First and foremost, very important. Occasionally, I hit the explicit button when I release a podcast episode. And I did that this week again. But I really meant it this week. So consider this week like sort of an explicit button with a little exclamation point at the end of it. If you have little ones running around while you're listening to this episode, I'd maybe like throw some headphones in, just to be safe. The content's amazing. Our interview's amazing. I could stand up and cheer 100 different times during this interview, but I just want to be mindful that there may be small ears in the room, and it's probably a time to use some headphones. Second thing before we get started, one of the things that I am really passionate about is wine. It sounds kind of weird, but it's something that I really love, and something that I love exploring new types of wines. I love exploring wines from different parts of the world. So occasionally I may share a bottle of wine that I have tasted and really liked with you all. So this week, I tried a 2012 vintage of a wine called the Eye of the Needle Merlot, and it is from Pacific Wine Enterprises in Columbia Valley, Washington, not Wisconsin. Columbia Valley, Washington. Pacific Wine Enterprises is a tiny family-owned winery located in Woodinville, Washington, and they really produce limited quantities of handcrafted wines from a lot of premier vineyards in Washington. They hand bottle every single bottle, and they believe that this artisan approach allows them to preserve the delicate balance of aromas and unique characteristics of each wine. So, had to share this one with you because I really loved it. It's a nice beefy Merlot if you like that type of thing. And truth be told, I got this bottle sent to me directly to my house, and I got it for free. And you can too. So I've thrown a link in the description of this episode. Click that link if you want more information about how you can get free artisan wine shipped directly to your home, so you can enjoy some of these wines from all over the world. All right, let's get on with this week's episode because there's an awesome woman that I have for you to meet. Hey, everybody. I'm so pumped that you took some time to be with us this week. We have an awesome woman on the podcast with us. And before I get ahead of myself, I will go ahead and introduce her. Her name is Jessie Schiavone. Welcome, Jessie.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm so excited for you to be here today. I know a little bit about your background, but not nearly enough. So let's just jump right in. Help us get to know you a little bit and tell us about yourself.
I am currently a director of client success at Opower, and I've been working with pretty much for 10 years in large technical project implementations in the utility and energy space. So I think managing large teams, managing messy projects, working in energy efficiency and kind of grid efficiency technologies. And prior to that, I was almost 8 years active duty and 4 years at the Naval Academy, also working with kind of technical aviation platforms and electronic attack and people management again. So I would say common themes over the last couple decades are people management and technical projects and implementation.
That's awesome. So it seems like, it's an interesting path to go down. So you started your career out, it sounded like in the Naval Academy, and then spent some time active duty, and then went into this really interesting area. So how did that happen? How did you decide to go into the Naval Academy initially, and as opposed to a more traditional university?
Yeah, I think I grew up in Baltimore City, like the oldest of 4 kids, and my family didn't have a lot of money to pay for me to go to college. So we always had this understanding at home that you're either going to get a scholarship or you're going to work your way through school. And so I had a bunch of offers to different schools, and I was looking at all of them, and I was recruited by the Naval Academy and the other service academies actually to play basketball. So it wasn't like a dream of mine to get into any of these academies, the service academies. But when they approached me and I started to visit those schools, I looked at this big list and I was like, okay, of all the places I can go that are either free or mostly free, all of them would have provided a great education. Like all of the ones I was considering, the academic education was going to be great. So I kind of like threw that out and said, like, what are the things that differentiate these schools in good ways for me? And what I loved about the academy was kind of a little bit of marketing, but a lot of it turned out to be real. And it's the extra challenge or the added challenge of being able to travel the world in your summers and test yourself physically and mentally and emotionally, and be broken down and built back up, to like push my own limits, to jump out of helicopters and roll around in the mud and shoot M16s. And that stuff was like just obviously not offered anywhere else. And I thought it was wild. Like I visited and never looked back. I completed that application, and then it was just of which service academy do I choose. And the Naval Academy is in Annapolis. I'm in love with the water generally, and it was kind of an easy choice for me at that point. I think once I got there, you have to choose how to spend the next 5 to 10 years of your service commitment. And I always thought I would be on ships and on the water. And one summer when I was on a midshipman cruise, my kind of officer partner got sick on the boat, and so they stuck me with an aviator for the balance of my summer cruise period. And I like fell in love with the flight deck, the carrier flight deck, and the adrenaline rush, and I just wanted to be in planes ever since. So I actually didn't have my sights set on the academy. I fell into it but knew it was the right move for me. And I really didn't know I wanted to go aviation until that accidental switch in the summer. And I, at that moment, didn't want to leave the flight deck, knew that was the right thing. So I kind of stumbled into those two sort of moments and never looked back. They were great. And then I think graduating and spending the next 8 years active duty flying was like a lifetime ago now, but pretty exhilarating. So I have no regrets. I miss it sometimes. People always ask me if I miss flying. I think I do. I miss flying. I try to make time for it, for fun and recreational now. But I don't really miss the Navy as an institution. And I got out in time to have kids, and so I've kind of I moved from flying jets at 500 feet and 500 miles an hour to flying a desk now with a pretty cool team and a cool family.
I like you so much after that answer.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. I have 1,000 questions I want to ask you, but before I kind of move on a little bit, I have to ask you if you had to give me your top, I'm not going to give you a number 3, 2, whatever, top small number of experiences that you had at the Naval Academy, because you listed some pretty awesome things that you got to do. Top few experiences, what were they?
At the Naval Academy, my first launch off a carrier deck, I call them launches and traps, coming back in, right? You go from 0 to 120 miles an hour in about 3 seconds. That's pretty incredible as a 19 or 20-year-old kid. And then coming in to land on that deck at night by the moon is pretty intense. So I think that experience pretty much locked for me the next almost decade of my life. I knew I wanted to fly, and I was committed to essentially almost doubling my commitment. Instead of only doing 5 years for the Navy, you approach 10 when you fly. So that was kind of a crucial moment, and it was super cool. I think I'm gonna kind of, it's not a specific moment, but in general at that school, you are miserable often, and so that's like not cool. But what is cool about it is that it's like that shared misery kind of experience that causes you to form some of the tightest bonds with people that you'll ever form in life. And it's certainly no Auschwitz or other like horrifying struggle that like you and I talked about earlier, but it's the most miserable experience I've been through, and I have some of the best friends still today from that. And I don't think I could have gotten that at a normal school because you're really tested in ways. I think physically is probably the easiest test, right? Your body will physically break at some point, and you just sort of fall on your face, and you recover and you get up. But like emotionally and mentally, to understand like where your limits are and how much of a certain thing you can manage and how you manage stress and life in stressful situations is just enlightening as a teenager and young adult. And that generally is like an experience that most people don't get at age 19, 20, 21. And many people do, but for me, like that was sort of it helped form a lot of like who I am and then what I knew I could handle going out into life in my early 20s.
I can imagine. That was awesome. I mean, it's something that not all of us get to experience. We don't know what our limits are. It's not very often that we push ourselves to them.
Right, and so that's like there are a number of those experiences that I am recalling like now that that put me in that situation, and it would put me and my teammates, my friends, my classmates in the same position together. And so like the sort of repeating of that over time, you're constantly testing your own limits at a pretty early age, and it's empowering. Because certainly you fail, but you learn early how to deal with failure, and then you learn that like failure doesn't kill you, and you get back up and you keep going, and you learn that sort of perspective thing that we were also talking about, like that was really hard, and so this other thing over here that's kind of annoying is not so hard, and I shouldn't stress out about it because I know I can handle 10 times that, and so I think perspective, some perseverance, some self-awareness at an early age, and then feeling empowered, I think building a sense of empowerment and confidence at an early age. I was able to get a lot of that out of my Naval Academy experience.
So you were talking about pushing yourself to your limits. One thing that just occurred to me, if you put yourself back in your shoes before you had, I guess, that first experience where it was really difficult and where you really were outside of your comfort zone, did you find that, I'm not quite sure how to word this, did you find that your actual limit was further than what you would have thought it was? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think I can handle that, but then you find out that you actually can, and you can go further than you thought you could.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens over and over again. So, and that's what we learn. We're like, you accelerate the learning about yourself, like, because it's repeated in such a short period of time in this 4-year period, you're like, geez, that was really hard. I thought we would have only achieved, X, but we achieved Y, and that's pretty awesome. So like coupling that with like repeated failures, I think a lot of kids coming into the academy or other competitive schools are overachievers. They're constant achievers. They rarely experience failure in life up to that point, right? And so you can become afraid to fail. And this school certainly forces you into situations where you will fail over and over again, and get back up, which is really important because I think I was one of those kids in high school that I didn't fail often. I was very comfortable in situations where I knew I could succeed, and so since the academy, I think, and then since the Navy, I'm definitely much more comfortable in roles at work and in life situations that are not black and white, where I can fail, that are ambiguous or ill-defined, And I attribute some of that comfort in that zone to like early training at the academy, where you're just kind of thrown into these crazy situations and forced to figure things out. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. That's a huge asset to have taken away from that time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think most people that go through take that as well. I see in my peers, like in my friends today, just their comfort in ambiguity, their comfort in like messy situations. You're more comfortable not knowing. And so I have a lot of coworkers today, like we all do, who are not comfortable in those situations, and I'm grateful that because I think life is just messy, so it's good preparation for life in general, but like also in the workplace.
When I think about a path like the Naval Academy, what's the gender makeup of a school like that? It doesn't strike me that it's super balanced, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's so I graduated in '99. At that time, there were 12% female, and so you're running around most of the time. Like I have a company size of classmates that you live 4 years with, and there's about 120 people in that company, with 30 or so kids per class, so 30 freshmen in my company on my floor in my dorm room, and those are the people that you get to know most and best over the 4-year period. And there was of those 30 people, there's one dorm room full of 4 girls, and the rest of the group of freshmen, for example, are the boys, and that like then persists through the 4 years as we stay together. I think since I was there, that's probably now closer to 20%. At least that was the target when I was leaving, and the Navy was working toward kind of 20% female. Yeah. So I think once you get into aviation and graduate, in my squadron there were 2 females for the 30 or so aviators that we had, 2 or 3. So it kind of hung around 10%. For the first those 4 years of school, and then the next 8 or so in the Navy.
Yeah. Did that make it harder for you, or maybe not, to come to terms with the idea of failing? I think it's something that we, as women have a really hard time. I'm in the same boat as you. I went through high school and felt like, I didn't fail very often. Even graduate school, I felt like I still was pretty high achieving, and it's hard. It's really hard to fall on your face. Was it harder, or did that not play a role at all?
This might be. I'm not think about that one, because I like to think that I didn't focus so much on, and I never have into my 30s, and I never focused on the gender gap there or the differences. And I think in college I intentionally tried to not draw attention to that. Like I didn't want any exceptions. I didn't want things to be easier for me. I wanted the same challenges. Like I don't think I had any sort of chip on my shoulder, like I had to prove that I was an equal. I consciously tried to not draw attention to that. And I have often asked, like, if I was hazed or singled out or discriminated against in any way. I wasn't, and I felt like I had a lot of like kind of big brother support. Like I have really great friends. I've been a groomsman in 3 weddings for my Navy friends, and 2 of the in my own wedding, like I had 2 of my best friends were guys from the academy. So I tend to not focus on those things, and I think that it served me well, like because I guess that then translates to the guys that I'm with. They don't focus on it either. If I'm not talking about it and they're not talking about it, and we're all doing the same work, then in my mind it comes out to your merit, your work ethic. Like, are you achieving what others are achieving? And I know that's not the case and wasn't the case for everyone.
Yeah.
So I can't really speak to, in my personal experience, I didn't have any issues at all with being a minority at the school.
Got it. So, flashing forward a little bit to your time in active duty, tell me a little bit about your role. What did you fly? What were you doing?
It's called a Naval Flight Officer, NFO, and I didn't have 20/20 vision, so I wasn't a pilot. We'll make that distinction like in the movies that you usually see a pilot and a co-pilot, or a pilot and a weapon system operator. Like that was my role. And in the jet I flew, they're called electronic attack, EA-6Bs, electronic attack jets that fly off carriers, and they're primarily responsible for flying with strike and strike fighter or attack jets to like mask an ingress and an egress to create a bunch of electromagnetic interference on radar systems on the ground, to hide strike packages coming in and then hide them going out. And so we have 4 people in our jet, and I think one of the things that made it so fun is that you're not like a solo pilot. You have a team every time you go fly, with specialization in roles and respect for each role. And we had a pilot. I was eventually a mission commander, would sit kind of side by side with the pilot, with 2 in the back seat, creating jamming packages or missile packages. And it was awesome. Like I say, 500 feet, 500 miles an hour through the Cascade Mountains out west, flying, like training low-level flights with like 3 of my best friends, for years. That's like one of my favorite memories. I also deployed to in support of Operation Northern Watch and Iraqi Freedom, and we did 3 months or so in Turkey, flying into the northern part of Iraq to support no-fly zones there just before the war. And then during the Operation Iraqi Freedom, I was there for the first 60 days or so of the war. We flew in from Saudi Arabia over Baghdad when we thought then that the war was only going to be a few months long, 100 days maybe, like the Gulf War. And we all kind of went in looking for weapons of mass destruction, if you can remember back that far and during those conversations. And then, once there was no longer an air threat, they pulled most of the air wings back to the States. But as we know, that kind of ground war continued for a decade. So I had some, I guess, real combat experience. I've flown a lot overseas. I think we flew out of Japan for a few months too, when North Korea was posturing with their nuclear weapons years ago. And then I had a ton of different sort of training exercises in different states and countries, preparing for those other deployments. So I spent probably 5.5 years flying, based out of Whidbey Island, Washington, and deployed those 3 main deployments, but a bunch of other small ones throughout the years. And then after that, the Navy kind of says, great, thanks for all your deployment work, your combat effort, and you get what they call like shore duty, or a good deal. And I went to Boston, and I was a ROTC instructor at it's the Boston Consortium of schools, which are Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern, Tufts, MIT, and Harvard. And I got my MBA in the executive program there at night, and taught leadership management, weapons systems engineering, naval history, a few other courses with the Boston School of Management over a 3-year period. And really, I shifted focus to advising freshmen now on kind of what they want to do as they launch, their careers with the Navy. So that was summed up kind of my 8 years. I can't help myself. There's like this one experience that there's probably 2 times in my life I thought I was going to die. One was in SEER school, the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. And that is like the Hollywood version is the G.I. Jane movie.
Yeah.
But I was there's a smaller percentage of people. So everyone that can be, everyone that's all aviators go through this school. Everyone that's on the ground in a combat zone goes through this school. And it's, about a week or so in a classroom, a week or so in the field, in small teams, and then 2 weeks of this sort of big exercise where you are simulating. You have to survive. You've ejected from your jet. You have to survive, evade, capture, resist, torture, and then escape from the prison camp. And I was waterboarded there. A small percentage of people get waterboarded. Yeah. So if you are going through this simulation and you are being interrogated, like fake interrogated, they select a small number of people that actually get waterboarded, and they cover your head with a bag so you can't see anything, but they put you through the whole exercise, the motions of being waterboarded, and then others are watching. So it was it really was like one of the worst things ever. I have strong opinions about that now and whether or not it's an effective technique. But it was it's sort of like it burned into my memory now. When people ask me about my full 8 years, like sometimes I'll talk about it and sometimes I don't. But it's definitely like a moment that I can't forget. And people, I don't know if they still do it today. Like after all the discussions, I don't know if we still do that in training today. But I definitely think that you will say whatever you need to say to not let that happen again. So I don't know if it's effective because in my personal, I spewed all kinds of things, like whatever I could. I was just like a babbling mess, and you could ask me anything, and I was so afraid and broken. I would have said anything you need me to say to just like make that not happen again. And so like I don't think that it's like a very effective technique. But I definitely think it's torture. I also though don't think it kills you, right? Like you survive and you move on and you sort of debrief on it and understand what happened, and it's not physically scarring you. It's burned in your memory, but like you move on. So it's a different kind of torture. It is another one of those things where like so a bad day at work now, right? It's like nothing compared to that. It's another like life's hard, whether it's physical or mental. If I'm exhausted in some way, I'm like, at least that's not happening, so it's another, it's a perspective thing. Speaking of perspective, I would say my other good, or kind of another key takeaway from that time is, the perspective of like what's hard and what's not hard in life, and what's relevant and not relevant, and what should I stress about, and what really doesn't deserve that kind of energy on a daily basis now. So I'm grateful for the travel and the exposure to other cultures, exposure to third world cultures. I think it's really helpful for me and has like steadied me in corporate America when people can get a really caught up in the work and really caught up in deadlines and due dates, and issues and conflicts get kind of tense. But if you can always step back and babies aren't dying. I don't work in the medical industry. I'm not saving lives. I'm not, serving our country. I'm in corporate America now. And so I think do a decent job of not getting stressed out about the work, and still getting it done. And so that is one of the things that helps with my team. I think I can bring a sense of calm in many days to hectic situations for our clients, for my team, for my company, because nothing is as hard as that was.
Oh my God, that's the ultimate perspective. My mouth dropped open when you said that you had been waterboarded. I've never interviewed anybody who's been waterboarded before. So you're number one. You're the first one.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I could, if I'm like supposed to describe the steps of something like that, and I don't know if it's like relevant even for listeners, it's just kind of like additional detail, but it's very intense and yeah, unforgettable. But I think ultimately is just this thing where I can look back again and say like nothing has been that hard, and like I survived that. So like let's keep going, right?
Oh my God. You're so much tougher. We're so much tougher than we give ourselves credit for.
Seriously, yeah. Like that you asked me like what are some of those examples at the academy? That's kind of the biggest example of something the Navy like kind of put me through. They put thousands of people through it before me. We survive, and it's I think you're stronger for it.
Hey guys, so I'm interrupting this podcast interview with just a little public service announcement. Now, the content that we get into in the last portion of this interview is so stinking amazing, and I really want you to stick around for it. But as you recall, in the beginning of this podcast, I encouraged you to put headphones on if you had little ones running around in the vicinity. If you neglected to maybe heed that advice, and you maybe are thinking you might want to reconsider, this would kind of be the time to do it. I would go ahead and encourage you to put headphones on. Like I said, stuff coming up is awesome. Just want to make sure that we are sensitive to those who are in the room. All right, enjoy the rest of the interview. Can I ask you a random question?
Do it.
What was your call sign?
Oh boy.
And you know what my follow-up question is going to be, so.
Okay. So you might choose to chop some of this out. I don't know, but it was.
I have
grass.
An explicit button. It's okay.
Yeah, it was grass, and here's why. Because when I was flying in Turkey for one of those deployments I was telling you about, Operation Northern Watch, we were flying out of Turkey into Iraq, and I was working on my mission commander qualification. So I was relatively junior, and I'm working hard to be able to coordinate multiple jets in the air at the same time, and so I'm kind of earning respect each flight and working on that pretty hard, and trying to add value, trying to be a good teammate. And we flew with the Air Force at that time, and there was an F-16 pilot who was just not cool, and he was I mean, it's the only time I've really been sort of sexually harassed, but like not in a terrible way, just sort of in a demeaning, like nonchalant, like kind of slighted, like you're young and you're female, and by the way, you're Navy, and the Navy's not as cool as the Air Force. Just pile it all on, and it's like, yeah, this guy's kind of a douchebag. So like everyone knew it, and I didn't make a big deal about it. But it was just an annoyance, and it had gone on for a few months, and we were in Turkey for like the third month. And I mentioned like I thought I was going to die twice in my life. The second time was this deployment, and I think long story short, we generally would fly every day and not see a whole lot of action or whatever in the air. Iraq had no air force that was threatening at the time, and so like we kind of got complacent and took for granted that our flights would be pretty easy. They're monitoring, patrolling, looking for different opportunities to do some different things, but that you actually weren't threatened seriously. And one day that was not the case. They snuck in a high fast flyer in our direction, and I mentioned like the jet I flew is really not designed to do kind of the air-to-air combat stuff. It's not a fighter, and so we don't have a whole lot of self-defense tools on the jet. And they got this aggressor got really too close, and we had to run away. And so like all the other aircraft in the sky, this is like a chills moment for me. Like they heard my voice on the radio. They heard that we were in trouble. They like swarmed in our direction as we were running away, and like I felt really protected. I was super afraid. Everyone in our jet was afraid. It was a very intense moment. It was unexpected, and they got too close because we were complacent. But I felt like it was in the end a great like we rallied as a team of, British Jaguars were in the sky, Air Force F-16s and F-15s were there. And like, it was, I felt great. And it was a moment to celebrate. And we all came down that day. And after we debriefed and we like, sort of kicked ourselves for letting that happen in the first place, we were celebratory and like thankful and grateful and like had a bunch of beers. And so we're all kind of sitting around like relieved at the end of this pretty intense day, drinking a lot. And that guy that had been just a jerk the whole time, like grabbed my ass in a terrible way. And I turned around and I punched him in the jaw and knocked him out. He fell back into the street, and my squadron, like one of the guys from my squadron took a picture of it. They walked over to the grass where there was this sign because the grass had just been treated with fertilizer or whatever they do, and it said, "Keep off the grass." And so they popped that sign right on top of him. And grass for great ass is what one of the things he was calling me, and others had said to me before, but and I had just kind of brushed off because I didn't want to make a big deal about it. They took that sign and like popped it right next to him and took the picture. And then the next day at our bigger meeting and everybody's sober and we're actually back to work, his boss showed that picture to everyone in the room and he apologized. And we were great friends after that. So grass stuck. It had started as a derogatory kind of like, yeah, great ass, go somewhere else. And it became a call sign that stuck because I defended myself in kind of a cool way, and everyone respected it after that, even the guy that was a jerk, So it worked itself out.
Punched him in the face.
Yeah, because we were all drinking, and so I think I had definitely an advantage. Like, he would not have been knocked out otherwise, but it was probably like just the final, like, it just isn't just enough. So we were all a little emboldened that night, and it worked out.
You're like, I've had a hell of a day, and I am not taking it from you too.
Yeah, that's right. And it was good. So I think that's good. Like, as women, when that's happening, like, you do put up with a little bit, like, because you want to be one of the boys and you don't want to make a big deal about something that's not really a big deal, especially if it's just one dude and it's not a thing you really need to fight. And eventually, like, it just took me some time. But that night, yeah, I had a tough day, and I was like, I'm just done with you. Not having it. And everyone supported me in a really cool way. So it was, in that environment, you can't, like, file a complaint with HR, right? You sort of have to knock someone out. So it was great, April. I appreciate that story, but it's a tough one to tell sometimes.
I appreciate you. So all of that has probably set you up to just have this amazing wealth of experience. And, I'm sure you've brought that into your career now, and it sounds like you're doing some amazing work. And I just want to know a little bit about, you mentioned that you got out of the military and you had kids. So tell me a little bit about your life now. It has to be a drastic change, right? You've just punched this guy in the face, and now you're in corporate America and you have a family. So tell me a little bit about your life now and how that's all going.
Yeah, I think this is a big deal. So at some point, there's women choose to have families. Some don't. But when you make that choice, you are choosing to give up a little bit on the career in most cases. And I think there's a lot of discussion and debate about, whether it's like Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In from Facebook or, the kind of the comments that have come in after that. Can women have it all? Like, can you be this career focused and a great mom and a great spouse and a great golfer and a great whatever? And you want to be able to say, yes, like, you can have it all. Why shouldn't we be able to have it all? But I think the answer is no. I don't think that you can have it all at once. I think you can have it all over time. I think, like, I can be a great flyer for the Navy, and I can be a pretty like, selfish, adventurer. I did a crap ton of stuff I love in my 20s. But I also couldn't have been a great mom at that time. So I think I gave up flying in order to be an awesome mom. And I, at the same time, started my career in corporate America. And I think that you can do 2, maybe 3 things well at a time, like real things. I don't think you can do a whole lot more than that at the same time. Like, I can't I played basketball in college and I love and rugby, and I was on those teams, but I have to give those things up in order to pick the 2 or 3 things I'm going to focus on at once. So like, for me in my 30s, like I really surprised myself with how in love with my own kids I was, and how much I wanted to be a good mom. And at the same time, though, like I am an overachiever. Like I want this career. I want to succeed. I want to challenge myself intellectually and in ways that I can't as a mom. So I didn't want. I basically like limited myself to those 2 big things, and I gave up almost all extracurricular activities. I used to run half marathons. I used to do tries. A lot of physical activities. We traveled a lot. Like I think you have to prioritize. And for me, one of the lessons learned later in life, like beyond the stuff we talked about at the academy and in the Navy, sort of about survival and grit and testing yourself and pushing limits and failing, I think prioritization was hard, and it took me having kids to do it. I had to lower my personal expectations with like how much I can accomplish in a day. With that first kid, like I was lucky to get out of the house and get a shower, and like you kind of grow from there. And then the second kid and the third kid, I think I need physical challenges in my life. So like having babies naturally was like a way to physically challenge myself, push myself, love my babies at the same time, grow personally. I think now I work really hard with every job I take, every transition, whether it's between companies or it's a promotion within a company. Like I make sure my boss and my boss's boss and my own teammates know that my family comes first for me, and I'm unavailable at certain times of the day. And I don't think you can ever be too young to do that. Like I don't think that when you're 30 versus when you're 40, or you're new in a role versus you've been there for 5 years, I think it's okay to always say that, to like establish for yourself, like I only have one life to live. These are the things that are important to me, and I'm gonna hold myself accountable to that. So I support people on my team who do that. I'm like super aware of bosses that don't, and I try to fix that. But I think prioritization, and I think if you can say like maybe it's your third thing might be your one hobby that you get to have, but if you want to be like a great parent and a great spouse and a great great in your career, you probably are only going to be like, maybe you get to go golfing, maybe you get to do scuba diving, maybe like you're learning Spanish on the side, or you're getting an MBA, but like it's real hard to squeeze in a fourth or a fifth thing, and that's just something I think I've learned to accept. And I'm going to be a great mom for another 10 years, and then my kids are off, and I'll pick a new thing to fill that gap. But I find it hard to like kind of follow the conversations of the women who are saying you can do all the things at once really well. That just feels like a lot of pressure that is unnecessary. And so I think prioritization and making sure that young women like surround themselves with people who support them like that, and just choose. And I say choose not to accept otherwise. Like when bosses or companies or life is demanding that you flip those priorities, like those are moments where you have to check and see, is that what I want, and is that like the right move? And if I die tomorrow, like is that okay that I did that in these moments? And I think the only having one life to live and making sure that you're living it according to those priorities has been like the thing I learned in my 30s.
I like you so much. I'm freaking out. I can't even dig into everything that I want to dig into with that. I'm going to start with the last thing you said. Because I'm not there yet. I'm sort of letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but whatever, there's more detail behind it. So we'll just consider this like a little bit of a trailer for what's to come. What you just said about us having one life and prioritizing and deciding what's important and sticking with it and crafting an experience that is one that we don't have regrets and we can be proud of, that fits with who we are and what we want our days to look like. That is
Yep.
exactly the direction that I want to take this broader website. I'm so excited
Yeah.
about it. I'm literally writing content and writing seminars about that right now.
That's
So
right. That's what you're doing, right? Like
I
you
freaking love it.
yeah, you are like a great example of that, right? Because this podcast and you, it inspires you. It's helpful to the world. It's like it's helpful to so many people. Like I think you choose the things that you're passionate about, and like you have to make those a priority. I think I feel very strongly, like I've known a ton of people who say that, but they end up actually chasing a higher paycheck or a bonus or the next role because they feel like they have to climb a ladder. Or I think like some real reflection on what's important to you, and then like committing to it with your whole person, right? And propping yourself up with people who support that and believe in that, I think is just sometimes I feel like it's not done well by a lot of people, and it is hard, but it's like worth the struggle because it's just so rewarding. Like it feels good. There's less stress. There's more joy. You create joy for others. Like it's contagious, and I just think it's a good thing. I definitely would just maybe round that out and say more explicitly that everybody wants to make more money. I haven't met anyone that said I'm happy with my paycheck. You know, like everybody always wants to make more money. I've say 12 of 9 of my current 12 team members on this one team right now want comp increases or promotions. Like 4 out of 6 on another team want it. Like everyone always wants more money. And there's nothing wrong with that. Money definitely makes things easier. I think, but when that's the number one thing, that's the wrong thing. It is the wrong thing, and I've never seen that work out where someone's like, I just want to make another X $1,000. I just want to hit this milestone and make a whatever $1,000 per year. Like it's not a good goal. It's never good, and I've seen so many people chase the promotion or chase the comp increase, and instead, like the thing that I've seen and I feel myself has worked is you chase your priorities. The things that are important to you, like you chase those with all your heart and soul, because that's what will bring you money in the end. Like it's going to bring you, it does. It's like it for sure brings you joy and satisfaction. And I think you get rewarded for that over time, either through network connections or experiences with people you otherwise wouldn't have met, or a bigger paycheck, whatever. Like it just brings goodness. It breeds goodness when you are committed to your own priorities.
Oh my God.
Strongly about that, April.
100%. I wish I could high five you. Why aren't you here right now? I'm freaking out. I love it. Oh my God. I love it so much. There's one plug I have to put in. You should check out episode 22. There's a woman named Jessica DeGroot. She is the founder and president of a nonprofit called the Third Path Institute. She's 100% in line with you. She's like, go up to your boss. I don't care what job it is. I don't care how long you've been there, how old you are, whatever. You decide what your priorities are, and you should be able to fit them into your life. And your job should allow you to do that. And she gives you tools for how to do that. So she's awesome. Yeah. Super in line with what you're saying.
Cool. Episode 22. I got
Number 22. Yeah. Right. Okay. So you are phenomenal. Oh my God. I could just keep talking to you for the rest of the day, but I know we are wrapping up and we're way over the amount of time that I asked you to spend with me on the phone. So I super appreciate it.
No
I have to ask you one last question. It's the question I ask everybody at the end, and that is for your favorite motivational song for our playlist.
My favorite motivational song. I've got it. You ready?
Yes.
Tell me if you already have this, but my favorite song to just like scream to in the car is Vivir Mi Vida.
No.
By Mark Anthony. Do you have this one?
No, we don't. I love it.
It's great. Yeah, live my life. It's a pretty good wrap up of the things we've been talking about. And by the way, he's just awesome. So it's a great dance song. It's a great sing to it song. It pumps me up. I play it before big meetings. I play it with family. Yeah, it's great. I love it. Definitely would add it to the playlist.
I love it so much. You have been phenomenal. Your story is amazing. The lessons you're sharing are amazing. You're incredibly authentic and candid, which I can't tell you how much I appreciate. This has just been phenomenal. I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been fun. Best of luck to you on these things. They're great.
Thank you. Oh, I really hope you guys enjoyed meeting Jessie. She was so much fun to talk to on this interview, and I seriously could have talked to her for the entire day. And I don't know how long this interview is actually going to end up being because I haven't seen the whole thing put together yet, but I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit longer than my normal interview is. She was just awesome, so I really hope you enjoyed meeting her. Some things that I want to highlight from her interview. First of all, I mean, she is clearly a complete life experience junkie. And I have to say that I totally have that in common with her. The idea that she would choose a path for college based on where she could fire M16s and jump out of helicopters and, launch off of and land on aircraft carriers is pretty cool and is something that totally resonates with me and is something that I totally would have done. Also, something that resonates with me and maybe resonates with a lot of you is, she talked about being an overachiever and being a high achieving person. And what comes along with that is this notion of never really experiencing a true failure, like an actual failure where you just fall on your stinking face and it's just bad. It's very rare that those of us who would identify as high achievers would experience that. And one of the reasons why is that she hit it right on the head. I mean, and I'll just speak for myself, but I, especially in the past, was very, very afraid of failing to the point that I avoided taking risks, avoided them completely. And what that did is it completely kept me in this little bubble, in this little box, and I didn't allow myself the opportunity to experiment and maybe not do things perfectly. And it kept me from so many of the experiences that I've had in the recent past that I just never would have tried them because I was just afraid that it might not go perfectly. And I'm not even talking about an abysmal failure. I'm talking about I might not have done it perfectly. And so I'm going to avoid doing these things. So case in point, if you go back and you listen to some of the earlier versions of the podcast, actually, my last episode, there's a mistake in the podcast. I'm just kind of looking at those things as, hey, they're par for the course. I'm not a professional at this. I don't know what I'm doing. My whole goal in this is to just meet some cool people and introduce you to them. And I'm hoping that I'm achieving that. So if that means that I stumble a little bit along the way, if that means that I make a mistake here or there, so be it. But no longer am I willing to avoid taking risks and avoid experimenting and trying new things because, and this is leading me right into a giant old soapbox that, Jessie got me onto. Her point about saying that, we all only have one life to live. That is something that I'm not even kidding. I live every single day by that notion. My husband and I talk about it seriously every single day. We talk about the regrets that we would have if we died tomorrow. It sounds morbid, but if you actually accept and really focus on the fact that your life is finite, you don't have a ton of time here, you're only going to get to do it once, and every single day that you live, that timeline is getting shorter. I hope I'm not freaking anybody out here. But if you actually focus on that, it becomes one of the most freeing things I've ever experienced. That notion becomes your biggest ally because it goes back to some of the things that I talked about in a lot of podcasts, and I'm totally pontificating here. So hang with me. I hope you are. We've talked about the notion of, if you have the right why behind what you're doing, if your reason why you're doing it is strong enough, the how or how you'll accomplish it becomes so much easier because you're willing to try, and experiment on different things that you wouldn't have tried before. So the ultimate why for me is I'm only getting one shot. I mean, there's no way we're not getting any more time back. And so there's no way that I'm going to sit here and waste it anymore. And so I love that she talked about, in the context of having to decide what's important to her and deciding that her family was extremely important to her. She, hit it right on the head. We only have a little bit of time here. And so her point about chasing your own priorities and making sure that you know what it is that's important to you, that is just so, so powerful. The last piece that I want to highlight, my God, she's been waterboarded. That totally came out of left field. That completely surprised me when we talked about that. But what was cool about it is a perspective she took away from it. She talked about, okay, this horrible thing happened to me. This seriously awful thing happened to me. And she's definitely got some opinions about it as an interrogation technique after going through it. But it didn't kill her. And she's kind of used that experience as an anchor and as a comparison for difficult experiences that have happened after that. And I guarantee if you look back in your history, you have one of those times. Maybe you weren't waterboarded because oh my God, that's crazy. But I guarantee all of us can look back and we can point at experiences that were unquestionably difficult, so difficult. And we lived through them. And that means that the next really difficult thing that comes up, we're going to live through that too. So I just wanted to leave you with that little bit of wisdom from Jessie. It was just such a wonderful piece of her interview, and it was just so awesome to hear. The last piece that I want to highlight before I close out today is something that I alluded to a little bit. So I am working on, sorry, my daughter's going crazy in the background. She just got out of the bath and she's really mad about it. So I'm just going to keep rolling with it because my husband's with her. So shh. Something that I am working on right now is right along the lines of the discussion we had about, only having one life to live. I'm working on some in-person workshops and seminars that are designed to help people really think about what those priorities are and get serious and wake up and start to live their life more intentionally. So if you are in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and you would like a little bit of info about when these seminars are going to take place, they'll be at a local yoga studio in the fall. Shoot me a message on my website, aprilseifert.com. I'd be happy to send you some information. I'm freaking out. I might fall on my face. This is one of those times where I'm freaking out. But we'll see. I feel like I have a good message to share, and I have a lot of life experience to share. So I'm going with it anyway, and we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted. Like I said, I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I'm getting super long-winded here, so I'll stop talking. If you enjoyed this episode and you're enjoying the podcast, please shoot over to iTunes and leave me a rating or a review. You have no idea how much it means to me to get those messages. And on that note, I want to send a huge shout out to Shannon, who reached out to me via the Facebook page and let me know that she has been listening since episode 1 and has been really enjoying the episodes. So thank you so much for reaching out. You have no idea how much it means. It was so awesome. I hope you all enjoyed meeting Jessie, and until next time, have an inspiring week.